It's amazing. I just, at some point, we have to realize that, we've got to just wake up and release these to the general population. I guess that's what your mission here is.
Yes. My main purpose is creating ambassadors to the universe in consciousness and in fact with these civilizations. But to get there, I realized along the way, I kind of got into this effort and started the whole disclosure movement, because what I realized was, if we make contact with these civilizations, but then covert USAPs shoot them down or do worse things, then we have to do all this together. Excuse the salty language, but when I was sitting with Senator Barry Goldwater, who was the senior senator from Arizona who ran for president in 1964, I was at his home, and Senator Goldwater said, look, it was a goddamn mistake then and a goddamn mistake now that this was ever kept secret. But he told me he was denied access to these projects. And when he asked General Curtis LeMay about it, who was chief of staff of the Air Force and a good friend of his, he said, get me into the blue room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where all the ET remains and stuff were kept back then. General LeMay turned to him and said, Barry, I can't even get into that area anymore, and if you ever ask me about this again, I will personally see that you are court-martialed out of the Air Force Reserves. I'm sitting in Senator Goldwater's living room, and he's retired from the Senate in his 80s, and I'm going, was he serious? He said, he was serious as a heart attack. And, so in my meetings with all these sort of people all over the world, what I found is that, the sort of conspiracy theories of who is in and who's out and how this runs is always inaccurate. And what I've tried to do is bring some clarity to it, because it's not helpful to paint the whole government or the whole CIA or the whole Pentagon with that brush. It's got to be more detailed. People need to have a more complete understanding of how these projects operate.
So, Dr. Greer, do other countries operate on the same exact premise like what you just described?
Yes, the system of USAPs is replicated, as I said, transnationally. It's not just a U.S. effort. The center of gravity for it is the United States because of our military power, economic power, technology. But there are corollaries and associates of this operation in all the other countries, including China, Russia, Great Britain, Australia, all around. So in other countries, occasionally you'll see an effort, like in France, the government of France, the Ministry of Defense, wanted to learn to make peaceful contact with the ETs. And they were going forward, Admiral Moran, and it was an admiral and an MD and also a PhD in physics, set this up under President Sarkozy. We went over there, did a CE5 event, amazing what happened, unbelievable. But when the process of that was going on, their ambassador from France, the United States, was approached by an intelligence operative and threatened and told point blank, don't do this. And they said, we're going to do it in France. It's none of your business. And they said, yes, but don't get anywhere near a U.S. asset or you're going to regret it. And it was this back and forth and back and forth. So even though that was coming from a top admiral in the Ministry of Defense of France, he was not read into the unacknowledged operations even in his own country. So that's one of the problems. The same is true in America, by the way. The generals, admirals I met with in this country, if I've met with them, it's usually because they've made an inquiry through channels on this and have been basically told, we're not telling you anything, or lied to.
Right.
And most of them are smart enough to know they're being lied to.
Right, right. So they haven't fully been briefed? And they
haven't been briefed at all. Not at all. They're not fully. Forget it. They can't get. They were not even shown where the washroom is.
Wow, incredible.
In these USAPs.
And so the other countries are basically sometimes are they in collusion or they're all operating individually?
No, they all work cooperatively on this issue. So interestingly, back in the early days, there was they had a tap on my phone. It was when you had landlines. Remember the old days?
Oh yeah.
And I picked up my phone. And they made a mistake and left the hook up to the satellite, and I could hear the control room. Oh, wow. And I listened for a minute and heard everyone speaking. It was like a United Nations of different people. And finally, I said, who is this? And a woman came on, very thick foreign accent. I couldn't tell, could have been Middle Eastern. And said, oh my God, it's Mr. Greer. And I was so mad. I said, Dr. Greer to you. But I was irritated then
Yeah.
because I didn't like being, surveyed
Yeah.
that way. But and it's like Carl Wolf, who our witness, disclosure witness, was at Langley Air Force Base when we were downloading the digital images in 1968 from the moon. And he saw there were old structures and newer structures already there before we landed. And when he saw that, he knew he wasn't supposed to be seeing it. It was a top secret. But he said the area literally was like a UN of people. There were people there from China. Now, this is in the 60s. Russia, other countries, and they're all working in this highly classified SCIF,
Yeah.
again, Secure Communication Information Facility, where they were downloading the early digital pictures as the lunar orbiter took pictures around the moon. And those were filtered before they went to the mainstream NASA people. The problem gets to be, how did that develop?
Yeah.
Well, it developed in the 50s and 60s.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Uri, let's unpack this just a little bit more, because I think a lot of people really want to know the underlying basis of how this actually works.
Okay, so I think if you want to visualize it this way, it's a very classified, unacknowledged operation that has cells and affiliates in various countries within other countries, corporations, intelligence services, and governments. But again, just like in America, there's not a need to know, in the opinion of the committee running this, for all presidents to know or to know fully what's happening, or senators or oversight. So it's run the same way. You take that and replicate it around the globe. It's just that not every country, for example, there are developing world countries where there would not be a large presence, but there's some, like Brazil. There's a very big facility in Brazil that's related to this. So I think that there are these operations that are in various places. It's coordinated by an international group. And that group is global, but again, the center of gravity is in the United States.